Hey everyone, welcome back. We have another gray box today, one of our favorite things here at YouTube. We've got our black background, we've got our white table. It is business as usual, so let's check the card. Ready? Ooh, Tsavorite. So what I know about Tsavorite, it's from Kenya. It is well known for this beautiful bright green color. You know, when I think of certain stones in the business, pariba tourmaline, Tsavorite you've seen, we've talked about, you know, plenty of other stones that they're known for their bright color. It looks like you plugged in a stone to electrical socket. Tsavorite is one of those stones. I really don't think there's anything else like it in the business. But what I'm really excited about is that I'm actually a January baby and my birthstone is garnet and Tsavorite is a type of garnet. So I'm kind of excited to learn more about my birthstone today. And fun fact, we actually have a guest. Bruce Bridges will be here. He is a Tsavorite expert and I'm pretty sure he will blow your mind. We're excited to have him here. So I'm gonna unbox this. I assume it'll be rough, maybe a specimen, potentially a gemstone. This is kind of a small box. Should we jump on in? Ready? Okay. Fun fact about these little guys, when I was in Brazil, I used to have to check my shoes for scorpions. This isn't gonna sting. It is made of pewter. It's pewter. You have another box for me, don't you? All right, I don't think I've ever had this isn't a bug, but I've never had one of these on the show. And you know what, frankly, I hope to never have a live one of these on the show because if we do, then we've got bigger problems, like a lack of a host. Oh my gosh. All right, folks, this is maybe one of the more beautiful pieces we've had on the show. I've never held a Tsavorite that is this high quality. Immediately I noticed the color, the size is significant. I love that cut. This is a piece that is meant for, you know, a big piece of jewelry. This is a piece that any collector would love to have. So immediately when you look at this, you may think, all right, Natalie, that looks like an emerald because it's green. The reason this, I think, pops so well, I mean, Tsavorite is known for that color, that bright, beautiful green. It has a very clear crystal. What I really want to learn today more about how Tsavorite is mined and the process and how they actually found Tsavorite, you know, what's the history of the stone. I'm probably going to be Tsavorong, but Bruce is going to be Tsavorite. Hopefully Bruce can enlighten us about that and we'll have some fun. Let's bring him on in. All right, Bruce, you've never been on YouTube before, have you?
No, I've actually never been on camera before.
Say hello to the camera.
Hello, everybody.
We actually have a ton of subscribers and they love gemstones just as much as you and I do. So wonderful. I think they are thrilled today. I have a question though, I've never had one of these. You want to explain this?
Certainly so. So that is a scorpion that was cast from an actual scorpion from our scorpion mine. Our scorpion mine, we're very creative. It has a lot of scorpions there. So needless to say, you check your shoes in the morning and that guy we found along with several others that we've cast and thought it would be an interesting tidbit for you as it is a piece of Tsavorite history. Interestingly enough, that's actually not on the larger side for what we get. We do get quite a bit larger than that.
Have you ever been bitten by a scorpion?
Have been stung by a scorpion
How
before.
bad was it?
It burns like fire at first, but after a while you get over it.
You've been in the business for a while. Your family was in the business. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into gemstones?
So my family's been in Africa in the gem and mineral industry for more than 3 generations now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And my father's the discoverer of Tsavorite, Campbell Bridges.
Okay.
So I was born into the business and it's all I've ever done, and really all I've ever known.
Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Tsavorite? How did he find it? Was he looking for a new discovery?
No, actually at the time my father was working for the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority in what was then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. And he was working on beryl deposits. He saw a range of hills in the area in which he was working that was quite unlike any place he had ever seen. The geology was quite unique, he felt, and quite interesting. So one day he decided to take a weekend off and go and investigate and prospect in this range of hills and see if he could find anything. And as he drove to the base of the range of hills, he couldn't drive any further on the bush path and he jumped out of his vehicle and he started to meander and make his way up the range of the hills, prospecting as he went. A little further up the hillside, a lone roe Cape buffalo charged at him out of the bush. There was a very steep ravine to the side that my father dove into, too steep for the buffalo to come in after him. Seeing that, my father made his way along the bottom of the ravine and my father kept making his way up the hill. Towards the crest of the hill, he caught a flashing green glint in the sunlight that was quite unlike anything he had ever seen. And he went down to investigate what that green glint was, and he collected several very, very tiny samples of what looked to him to be a garnet. However, he had never seen a green garnet of that color and variety before. And to his knowledge, there was no account in history of such a find previously. However, my father then left that deposit before he was able to further investigate, and he moved to Tanzania, actually, northern Tanzania in 1967, 6 years later, put to the back of his mind what he had found in Zimbabwe. Then in 1967 in northern Tanzania near the hills of Komolo, he saw a range of hills that had geology that seemed very similar to what he had previously seen in Zimbabwe. And he said to himself, well, you know, I never had a chance to further investigate what I had found in Zimbabwe. Now that I have the opportunity, I'm going to go and see if I can rediscover what I had found then. And lo and behold, after a little while, he was able to rediscover these green crystals that indeed were correct with his hunch that they were a variety of garnet and a green Grosler garnet.
So how did he know it was a variety of garnet? Had your father had any experience with
Yeah,
garnets
well,
before?
my father's father was a doctor of geology.
Okay.
My father grew up in the industry with his father having a doctorate in geology and being the head geologist at Rand Mines in South Africa. With that being said, my father's first mine was actually an amethyst mine that he found on the family property at 6 years old. My father also got his university degree in geology from Wits University in South Africa. So he had a long history and background in geology and gemology by the time he had come across Tsavorite.
So you said your father was the first to discover Tsavorite. How do you know you're the first person to discover a stone? I mean, what's the process
because
to
it
go
doesn't
through that?
it doesn't appear on the mineralogical record.
Oh, okay.
And for instance, you have gem labs set up throughout the world. As an example, the Gobelin Gem Lab in Switzerland. These are gem labs that have been set up, and their specialty is to look at gemstones and decipher the species, variety. So what would happen, you would take a sample of whatever material that you have, you send it to the gem lab to test.
Okay.
For instance, none of the labs would have anything on record for this particular material, whatever it is that we're talking about, in this instance, Tsavorite. So my father took those samples, he sent them into the Gemological Institute of America, and the Gemological Institute of America was like, wow, these are the first samples of this material that we've ever seen. From there, the next goal is, okay, great, you've discovered this new mineral. However, with that being said, is it actually commercially available, and can you produce it commercially? So after that first step of discovery, you then have to take that discovery and turn it into a commercial enterprise, a mine, and see if that's possible, because there are indeed many discoveries that there's simply not enough material out there to make commercially viable.
That's a really interesting point. So it doesn't really matter just if you find it, but can you make money off of it as well, or can you find enough of it?
Exactly, and can an industry be developed? Because it's not just making money for the individual that discovers it, because any of these gemstones, and this is true for any colored gemstone in the world, you have an entire community, you have whole countries. If you look at Botswana's reliance on diamond production, so you have communities, villages, you have whole ecosystem of people that are reliant on minerals from throughout the world in their production.
The mineral was discovered. Now tell me a little bit about how you start this enterprise. Did your father have to purchase land? How do you get the mining rights? I know in Brazil it gets a little dicey.
Nowadays it's quite dicey. In Africa, in those days it was more straightforward. Basically you have a Ministry of Mines. Much of the mining law in Eastern Africa is very similar to what you would actually find in the West, as much of it is English law. So basically the mineral rights in these countries are vested in the government itself. So you can't actually purchase the rights to any claim and own it outright. So basically you're getting a license from the government, which is like a lease, to mine what's under the surface. And then the government gets X percentage of whatever's exported from the country.
You've mentioned mine to market. Can you kind of define what that means for our YouTube audience?
Goods are mined in country of origin, and then those goods are in the rough exported to a manufacturing country. For instance, you could have goods mined in Africa and sent to Asia for cutting. Then the goods will be sold in either Asia or maybe in the West, in Europe or the United States. One aspect that we always prided ourselves on is the fact that we are and were a 100% vertically integrated company. So not only did we we mine the product in country of origin, but we process the product in country of origin. So from the mine, we'd wash and grade the material at the mine. It would then go to our head office in Nairobi. The goods would be cleaned and graded, and from there, we would cut all of our material. So we're keeping the entire value in country of origin, and we're also teaching a very highly skilled trade to the local populace.
Can you tell us a little bit about the mine itself? Do you walk on straight into the side of a mountain? Is it more like a diamond mine? How does it look?
You do have several colored gemstone mines that are large scale, but not to the extent of a diamond mine. My father was always a very staunch environmentalist and was against open cast mining. In open cast mining, you're basically removing as much earth as possible in order to create this huge pit in the ground, and it looks a wee bit like an atomic bomb goes off. You'll see large waste dumps miles out. If you were to come to our scorpion mine in Kenya, you won't see any waste dumps. As you drive up to the mine, you'll see a little oasis in a very semi-arid region that we've made. And as my father didn't choose to open cast mining, he chose tunneling as his mode of gem extraction, and it's far more surgical procedure than open cast mining.
Okay, so you drill straight into the side of a mountain or an area?
Yes, so basically you'll have the surface layer, you'll have your soil layer that you'll have to remove, then you can come to a lot of the time a kunkar capping, which is a calcrete capping. It's like natural cement really. And once you get into that layer, you're going to basically cut a wall and start tunneling.
Can we talk about the material? I mean, this piece right here, this is absolutely fantastic. How many carats?
That particular gem is a 9.5 carat Tsavorite. It's a very large stone.
It's huge.
The most impressive thing about this particular gem is the actual color. The number one most important factor in colored gemstones is indeed the color of that gemstone.
We've talked about the 4 C's of diamonds. Do you know the 4 C's of color?
What's that?
Color, 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 and color.
Color,
Yeah,
exactly.
Color reigns supreme.
When dealing in color, there's minute subtleties will make the difference between a 7 out of 10 stone and a 10 out of 10 stone.
Okay.
And this particular Tsavorite contains that tiny bit extra that really makes it just as close to perfect a color in Tsavorite as possible.
So what are some of those subtleties?
This particular gem has great saturation. It's not undersaturated, it's not oversaturated, and hence doesn't exhibit extinction. And if you look at the actual hue of the stone, it's a very pleasing green with a very slight secondary modifying hue of blue to it. That combination, very hard to come by and so very rare in Tsavorite.
Okay, you mentioned extinction. Can we do a quick dictionary definition
Sure.
for our viewers?
So extinction is simply where you have lack of light return in a gemstone. And when you look at the gem, it will simply appear to be very dark in certain areas of the gemstone.
So, do you have any more goodies today for the show?
Certainly so.
'Cause I see another gray box. Do you want to
Here
unbox
is.
it?
Sure.
You're a guest.
Sure.
I'll leave it up
Thank
to you.
you.
All right, ready?
So here we go.
Holy moly! Holy guacamole!
And what you have
Yay! 3 gemstones.
I felt that these were important to show as the Tsavorites of good size and extreme rarity. These 3 particular gemstones capture and illustrate colors in Tsavorite that represent the finest colors in Tsavorite.
Your father actually went to Tiffany and talked to Tiffany about the stone, and at that time it was called green grossular-like garnet. Where did Tsavorite come from? Is there, a special place, or is that a family name?
My father had a previous relationship with Tiffany and Company. He went to his contact and friend at Tiffany and Company, President Harry Platt, and he showed him his new discovery of this green grossular garnet, to which Mr. Platt was extremely fond and felt that it was a fabulous gemstone. And Tiffany and Company then went on to sell and promote this new find. After a while, Mr. Platt came to my father and he said, Campbell, your new discovery of this green grossular garnet is a fabulous gemstone, and as you know, we're fully behind the gem. However, we need a more romantic name. Green grossular garnet doesn't have the best ring to it. My father told Mr. Platt, well, Harry, even though I discovered this gemstone in Tanzania, we had to leave Tanzania when the mines were nationalized. I retraced the strike into Kenya in 1970 of this gemstone and rediscovered it in Kenya and credited with the first discovery of Kenya in 1970. And Kenya has taken me in, and that's where I'm going to raise my family. I like to name it in honor of a place in Kenya. And there is a very lovely national park in southern Kenya called Tsavo National Park. And my father told Mr. Platt, since we are very close to the Tsavo National Park. I'd like to name it after Tsavo. At the time, mineralogical nomenclature had to end in ITE, hence you had tanzanite. So what you had is, you had my father's suggestion of Tsavo, and then new discoveries had to end in ITE, so they combined the two, and Tsavorite was born.
All right, so we talked about Tsavorite, we talked about scorpions. Did you go back to Kenya often, or do you?
Certainly, when my father was still alive, I was going to take my wife there, we were going to raise our family there, and then tragically with my father's assassination in 2009, things really changed for us. Just the level of violence that we saw made it unsafe for me to raise my family there. Now I split my time between the two. Things are still very difficult for us in Kenya, so I split my time between the United States and Kenya. The company's still headquartered in Kenya, and that's where the mines are, but our head sales office is now in the United States.
Thank you for coming on the show today and for your fantastic stories.
So the closer look on this particular gem has an open color, but good saturation. So it's not undersaturated where it is more of a pastel color, and it's not over dark where it exhibits extinctions. And the color is a pure green, tending to a slight touch of a blue secondary modifying hue to the grain.
I can see that from here.
It's that slight touch of blue that truly sets this apart.
All right, so you enjoyed your time on YouTube.
Very much so.
Will you come back, maybe?
If you'll have me, I would be honored to be back.
I would love to have you to come back. So comment below, and everyone, tell Bruce thank you for coming and for bringing me 4 beautiful gemstones. And hopefully we'll have you come back.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor.
All right, bye everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.